Hey everybody, welcome back to I Know a Guy. If you're new here, my name's Anthony. I'm a business profit advocate. Here we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals, and people just doing cool things. For example, today we're meeting with Frank Piuck. He's a business architect. He helps businesses realize big problems sometimes have simple solutions. How you doing today, Frank?
I'm doing very well. It's a
Awesome.
pleasure to be in here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on. I know we talked once before. Really was interested in everything that you have going on. I figure other people might want to hear it too. So where are you calling in from today?
I'm in northern New Jersey. I'm almost exactly 20 miles from the George Washington Bridge, so a hop, skip, and a jump from Manhattan.
Okay, I gotcha. Are you a lifer? You've been there your whole life? Are you newly moved there, or?
I've been here for 30 years. I'm a native of Brooklyn, but it wasn't as hip when I was growing up as it is now.
I gotcha. I've never been to that part of the East Coast. What's fun in your neck of the woods?
Um, I live a very quiet life. I do a lot of my own cooking, but we have amazing restaurants if I want to go out. And again, we have New York, we have the ballet, we have the opera, we have the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we have the Museum of Modern Art, we have some cool stuff in New Jersey too. It's the Yogi Berra Museum, if you want to know the history of Yogi Berra.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, so a lot of neat things that you can go out and do. So one of the big things looking at your LinkedIn and hearing about what you do, most people they're asking, what's a business architect? So can you kind of give us a high level on what that is and what you do?
It's a little highfalutin, but basically, I think in terms of systems and I think in terms of systemic problems. And these days, you say systems, people think computers. And of course, computers are systems, but so are org charts, so are chains of command, so are all the arrangements inside a business. Before we had computers, we had systems. Then those systems don't always work well. So if you have a business that has grown from 5 million to 10 million, you have policies and procedures that worked at 5 million that may be in the way at 10 million. Um, you have policies and procedures that you need now that you haven't thought of yet. You have people who are doing jobs that they're good at, but the organization structure needs to change and their roles need to change. And the more the organization grows, you need more specialization. So you need a marketing department and a sales department and a finance department and an IT department. And those people use the exact same words and they mean different things. And they have arguments because they're using the same words and meaning different things, where if they knew what the other guy meant or the other woman meant, they wouldn't have an argument. They would have a discussion. So I I have worked in IT and I have worked in manufacturing and I have worked in finance and I have worked in marketing, and I can translate and I can see problems that are obscure to somebody who's working in a business by coming in with fresh eyes but broad experience. I've had people ask me questions when I was working in a large corporation, and I said I don't know, and the fact that I didn't know was valuable information.
Hmm.
You ask somebody, why are you doing this? And the answer is, we've always done it that way. That's a sign that something hasn't been examined in a long time. And so let me give you a completely non-business example. I met a woman who is this expert in posture. And she says, if you are working at a computer and your ergonomics aren't properly aligned, you will get backaches. And and you may go to a doctor and the doctor may not know to ask you about the ergonomics of your computer workstation. Somebody who does will come in and say, are you having backaches? And they'll rearrange your computer and the backaches will go away. Um, we evolve, we grow with a business, and problems arise, and we put out the fires, and fires recur, and we don't know why the fires recur, but we keep putting them out. And somebody who isn't in the business can see something really easily sometimes.
Okay, I got you. How long have you been doing this?
I have done this my whole life in a non ancillary way, working in a big corporation. I say, why are we doing this? Can we do this better? I tended to be the person who figured out where we could use a computer to do something that somebody was spending 10 hours a week on, change the computer programs to give them summary reports, and they could spend 1 hour a week on it. But this is basically a new initiative. The business architecture business is brand new. It's the first time I'm actually focusing and specializing on this, and I'm really excited
So what
about
has
it.
you so excited? What's your favorite thing about what you're doing now?
Well, it's been calling at me, actually. I many years ago, I was working for a company called Creative Output. They had a completely different way of looking at the world. It was founded by a physicist who came to business, and he had no business preconceptions. So he was asking, why do you do this all the time? And when he got a dumb answer, he tried to figure it out. So that company, that man figured out that in manufacturing, if you don't know where the bottlenecks are, where the restricted flows, where the limited capacity machines are, you can't possibly run the factory at full capacity. You'll be starving the bottleneck and underproducing what you could produce. And he tried to sell scheduling software to companies that needed to be persuaded that they'd have to change their performance measurements to use it. That was a very, very life-changing experience for me. And I've looked at the world differently ever since. So it's almost 40 years ago. And I tried to start a consulting practice when I left that company, and I didn't have the sales and marketing skills. I'd been an internals guy, but I've been an entrepreneur now for 30 years, and I do have sales and marketing skills I didn't have then. And it's like, let me put this to use before I retire. Let me give this a shot. Let me do what I think is the most valuable thing I can do in this world. Because I think this could make huge differences to many businesses.
Okay. Outside of just the sales and marketing skills, if you had to start over today with everything that you know, what's something that you would do different or implement sooner into your business?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer it because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing the different thing right now.
Okay. So
I'm making the change.
Okay. So if you had to boil it down, then let's look at like a commonality between a lot of the businesses that you are working with that you're saying. What's something that you're able to most times go in and see this is a mistake that you're making with scale? What does that look like?
The first thing I'm going to look at is how people are measured and how they're incentivized. So here's some examples you might even have heard of already. If you're measuring computer programmers by the number of lines of code they write in a day, you're going to get a lot of crappy code. And it may work just fine, but the person who has to debug it 3 years later will be completely lost. It takes, Mark Twain once said, I'm sorry I sent you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. Good code is brief and well documented. And that's concision takes thought and time. You can write something fast with lots of lines of code. It won't be as good. Another classic example is the customer support data center or call center where they're measured by the number of calls they take a day. If you're measured by the number of calls you take a day, you're not going to spend an hour with a single customer, even if that's what that single customer needs.
Okay. So a lot
And
of
you
them,
have unhappy customers who go way mad and may go to your competitor because you didn't give them enough time at the call center. And at the same time, unhappy customers tend to be abusive. And you may have a lot of people in the call center who are getting people off the phone because they're getting abused, and then they quit. And you have to hire new people, and you're spending a fortune recruiting new people. It might be much cheaper to let your call center people spend more time with the customers.
okay. So they're measuring the wrong thing instead of looking at like measuring the length of a process. They should be measuring the outcome. Did this do the job in the same amount of time it took you to do a bunch of that?
Yes, measuring outcomes is important, and measuring inputs can lead you astray. Another classic example is the purchasing manager who is measured on getting the lowest cost per piece, and therefore is buying large quantities, and he has to work with the materials manager who's measured on having the smallest possible inventory, and those two people are inherently in conflict. If the purchasing manager is measured on a different basis, then you have faster inventory turns and lower working capital. And that's a big value to a company, right? The more money you have tied up in inventory, the more you're paying other expenses, the less capital you have for investment and all the other things you need money for. But you're encouraging your purchasing manager to buy large quantities and tie up money.
Okay, I got you. So what's a good client for you look like? What's your average client, I guess?
Again, this is a new business. There is no average client yet. The target market is businesses that are small enough that a soloist can go in and make sense out of them quickly. Big enough so that they have multiple departments where these sorts of logical local decisions seem to make sense and impact the business, right? So if you are a solo entrepreneur with 3 employees and you are managing them all directly, I'm not as valuable to you as if you've got a finance department and a purchasing department and a marketing department and an operations department that have conflicts that I can help resolve.
Okay. So somebody of an appropriate size to where you can find those differences where they're
Right,
taking different measurements. They might not be optimized to work together.
right. And
Okay.
there are other things, as we said, in the manufacturing world, bottleneck machines are something that's really important to know. There are non-manufacturing analogs, but they're harder to describe. And one of the things that's really exciting me is just to see how many problems I'm going to run into.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. No, definitely have a lot
Yeah,
of.
I love puzzles, and this is going to be a gigantic puzzle. The biggest challenge is going to be diplomacy. I come from, I'm a native New Yorker, and New Yorkers are famously blunt, and I am my my family was probably blunt by New York standards. So so explaining things to people, information they need to know in ways that they understand without sounding patronizing or making them feel like this is obvious and they should have known it, and trying to make them feel stupid that's going to be a challenge to persuade people. You know, the person who tells the purchasing manager to buy for the lowest cost per piece needs to be persuaded to let the purchasing manager do it a different way. Not be the purchasing manager who is trained to do it that way. He might need to be rethink, and that's a challenge, right? You need to make him feel like they're a participant in the process, that's not being imposed on them.
Okay. What about like power partners? Who do you see would potentially work well with referring back and forth?
Um, People who are business brokers and are helping people buy businesses, those new owners have no vested interest in the way the business used to run. They might be a very good client. So the business broker could be a very good referral partner. Accountants could be good referral partners. Um, I'm thinking corporate recruiters who are helping bring new executives into companies who don't know the lay of the land. Those new executives could be good clients, especially for a first engagement with a company where they need to build credibility, and by helping them build credibility, I build credibility so that there can be a longer term relationship. So corporate recruiters are somebody I'm interested in meeting. I don't know if that's a viable referral partnership or not. I think it's worth exploring, and I'm interested in finding people to talk to about that.
Absolutely, definitely worth a one-on-one to, like you said, explore those possibilities. Is
Yes,
there is there anything that I failed to ask that you wanted to mention?
you asked a lot of good questions, and I'm sure there are others. If you'd asked, I'd have given you additional information, but I think we've covered a lot of what's most important.
Okay. As long as there's nothing pressing, because anybody that wants to meet with you, they can ask those questions in particular and hear
Of
more.
course, I'm delighted to meet anybody who's interested.
Perfect. Awesome. What's the best way people get a hold of you if they are interested, if they want to have that conversation?
LinkedIn is the best, and if you Google LinkedIn Piuck, Piuck, there's only me and my sisters and my late mother and my late aunt. I'm the only male who's going to come up, so it'll take you straight to me.
Okay, so easy to find. And I'll be sure to take your LinkedIn and put it in the description, so it's even easier than that. They don't even have to go to Google. Just
Yes,
click on the
that will
link.
be.
So
I appreciate that. That we want to make it easy for people.
absolutely. And if somebody's a little bit more shy, they can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to make that three-way introduction if that's what they prefer. But otherwise, if anybody out there would also like to be interviewed, feel free to reach out to me. I'll share my link tree with my all my socials and my calendar link in there as well, so we can hop on one of these and get to know you a little bit as well. But otherwise, Frank, I really appreciate you coming on. It was awesome getting to meet with you again, pick your brain a little bit. So again, thanks a lot for coming on. But otherwise, let's all get out there and meet some new people. All right.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care.